Hey, it's me, JoJo from Jerz, and shocker, I have something to say. I want to talk about how MAGA and their melon-hued messiah continuously say that every single trial Donald Trump is facing has been politically motivated and is election interference. Because that's bullshit. Here are the facts. Fact: Cyrus Vance, New York DA at the time, began issuing subpoenas in the hush money payment case in August of 2019. Fact: Fani Willis launched her investigation into Trump in 2021. Fact: the United States House Select Committee on the January 6th attack opened their investigation in July of 2021. Fact: Letitia James opened her New York City business fraud investigation into Trump in 2019. Fact: the National Archives first asked Donald Trump to return the classified documents he took in May of 2021. He only returned some, not all. So in March of 2022, the FBI opened an investigation. That August, they searched Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump announced his candidacy on November 15th, 2022. So fact: all four investigations into Trump were undertaken before he ever announced he was running again. Fact: he's not being indicted in the middle of his campaign. He is campaigning in the middle of his indictments. As an aside, during his Fox Town Hall, because that's what you give to a twice impeached coup plotter when they refuse to participate in the debates, Trump bragged about making at least $8 million in foreign money while president during that town hall. He admitted that it came from his properties, but he also added that he had to do services for these foreign governments to make that money. What are services? What could that be? That sounds kind of fishy, doesn't it? And for the record, the day before he said that, he said he could commit crimes while president and get away with them unless he was impeached and convicted on that impeachment by the Senate. So if he doesn't have that, he's immune from prosecution. So let's just say that he knows that he committed crimes while in the White House in terms of, let's say, accepting foreign money for official U.S. policy, because he knew if he wasn't impeached and convicted, he wouldn't be held accountable. So if he were to ever be returned to the White House, I think we can pretty much guess that he would just commit crimes again, right? Because he would know that those Republicans were never going to convict him of impeachment. So he could do whatever he wants. He could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and get away with it. This is where we are now. He cannot be allowed to get anywhere near the White House ever again. If he does, he'll never leave. And God knows what kind of crimes he'll commit. I don't want to think about it. We have to think about it. I don't want to think about it. My guest on this episode is Tristan Snell. Tristan is a lawyer and legal commentator featured on MSNBC and NPR, and in the Washington Post and Wall Street Journal. He served as Assistant Attorney General for New York State, where he led the investigation and prosecution of Trump University. He also has a new book coming out at the end of this month called Taking Down Trump: 12 Rules for Prosecuting Donald Trump by Someone Who Did It Successfully. I always really enjoy talking to Tristan. He just knows what he's talking about, and he does it in such an engaging, interesting, entertaining, and downright lighthearted way for such serious subjects as these. We need voices like his so much right now and moving forward in order to protect this democracy. Tristan and I talked about Donald Trump, whether or not he's immune from being prosecuted for murder. We also talked about the Supreme Court. And we talked just about the unprecedented times in which we live. It's another great conversation. I really hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. Tristan Snell, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you as one of my phone friends when it comes to all things like legal, but particularly as it pertains to Donald Trump's myriad of legal entanglements. So
Yes.
let's just jump into it because there's a lot. Okay. So let's just start off right off the bat. Is Donald Trump immune from being charged with murder? Let's talk about that.
You'd think that this would be an easier question to answer
Oh
that wouldn't
no.
require so much. No, it is an easy question. The thing is that the problem here is that, look, the short answer is no, he's not.
Right.
But the problem here is that Trump unfortunately has mastered the art of using America's due process system against itself. He is able to come up with a plausible enough, even if it's total crap, legal argument that then the system has to take seriously.
Mm.
So even though his position is garbage, it now requires all of these very accomplished judges to sit and like consider it and go through the briefs and go through the oral argument. That whole process, now that whole machinery for deciding cases now has to take place on something that is not exactly a hard thing to decide. Does he actually have, because it's not just saying, oh, he has immunity while he's in office, which unfortunately, in my view, DOJ believes is the case, that they don't want to indict a sitting president, but that he could commit a murder while in office and then be immune for it even after he leaves office, unless the Trump people say he's impeached and convicted by Congress. That is their position after they got trapped into taking that position during oral argument. Good God, I really hope that the Supreme Court is not prepared to just shoot the American Republic in the head in a couple of weeks, because that's what this really comes down to. Is there still, the thing on the front of the Supreme Court says equal justice under the law, equal
Mm-hmm.
justice under law. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, do we have that anymore or do we not? Have we turned presidents and possibly other people into Ubermenschen that can actually just literally get away with murder?
And
If
get
we
the thing
have,
about
then I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that we're going to have a country or
uh,
any kind of functioning society if we have that problem.
I mean, how can we? I mean, he's arguing that he was immune from any crimes he committed while in office for in perpetuity, forever, right? So, and then he's
Forever.
pursuing that same office, which
Right.
conceivably, if his opinion, let's just say it's not his opinion, if his legal team's opinion, and I'll just put that in air
Right.
quotes, if it holds water, that if he was returned to that office, that he's under the impression while in that office that he can do whatever he wants, and that unless the Senate convicts him of an impeachment, which let's look at the Senate that we're looking at right now, let's say they
Correct.
stay the same, we know that won't happen. So he can do whatever he wants while in office, break any law, can shoot someone in the face in Fifth Avenue, and there will be no accountability. He would be immune from any prosecution whatsoever.
That's right. Basically, the new law, the Trump doctrine. I put
Right.
this in a tweet the other day. The Trump doctrine is effectively, as long as there aren't 67 members of the Senate to stop me, I can do whatever I want. That's
And
basically saying you're a Roman emperor at that point. Like at that point, the republic is over.
yeah,
Like that's pretty much it. It's over.
right.
The moment at which Rome turned from a republic into an empire was the point at which the consul, because it was an elected position, started basically acting as an emperor, and the Senate became merely advisory. That's what
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Hmm.
And that's effectively, and the Senate did have power to rein in an emperor, but it was really not, it wasn't something that happened hardly ever. But there were there was still law there, but the emperor basically like beat out all of that law. That's where we would go.
So he
That we
would,
would basically be done
right,
as a republic. It would
he
be
would be
over.
akin to the fall of the Roman Empire, but just also
It
about,
would be.
think about how corrupting that much power in the hands of that
Right.
few people would be. If not could be,
Right.
would be. Because we've already seen how even tangential connections to presidential power has corrupted people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and Lindsey
Right.
Graham, who once stood up against this person, but once he was sort of in power, then they were like, oh, okay, let's coalesce around this. We just want proximity to it, and have
Mm-hmm.
done unthinkable things since then. Really.
Yeah, I mean, we already have enough of an empire creep problem with the presidency anyway. It's been
Mm-hmm.
happening for a long time. We got lucky in that put it this way though, like we were still very worried about this problem when George W. Bush was president.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten so much worse that now we look back on W almost fondly. It's like, oh, well, he wasn't that bad. And it's like we got to remember he was
Oh,
terrible.
terrible.
But yet Trump is so much worse. Yeah, it's we are very much, we're not just playing with fire anymore. We're playing with like nuclear arms here. Like this is basically we're on the we are going to be at a number of these points where we're on the razor's edge over the next, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just this year, it's definitely this year, but I think it's going to be for the next 5 to 10 years. We are going to reach a number of these points where we are on the razor's edge. We're just this like teensy tiny peak of a
Mm-hmm.
mountain where we could tip over either direction. We're just going to have to work our way through, where we are basically one false step and it's over.
And it's systemic throughout the party, like you said. Like it doesn't end in the end of 2024. It's not over with Donald
No.
Trump, because what they're doing in the States is really undermining in democracy, in particular as it relates to gerrymandering and the Supreme Courts that they have that are very,
Yes.
very biased and trying to, again, tip the scales in the favor of the Republican Party, despite, the electorate not reflecting their elections. But we also have, just a total sidebar, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but just picking up on what you said, we also have a Supreme Court in this country that is unlike most Supreme Courts around the world, where these are not elected in their lifetime
And their
position.
lifetime.
Right, which is
Yeah.
crucially, and they have no real oversight. None. There's no real
Right.
mechanism in place. They certainly aren't policing themselves, even though they have some like ridiculous sort of guidelines now that's all bullshit. But Congress is
Right.
supposed to be the check on them, right? They're supposed to be, that's the mechanism. And then you've got Clarence Thomas just sort of like just putting it in our faces that he's completely corrupt, and he's very likely not recusing himself from a case where
Correct.
his
Even though he
wife,
should.
right, his wife is directly implicated in, because she played a role in planning the January 6th insurrection, and Clarence Thomas is not going to recuse himself from that case, and there's nobody who can hold him to account. Nobody. They won't anyway, but he won't
Yeah.
recuse. So there's another problem
Ginny,
with
Ginny Thomas is at the very least a material witness if she is not actually a co-conspirator. Even if you're just a material witness, he should be recusing himself, and any almost any other judge probably would in that situation, because it's like your wife actually had anything to do with any of the conspirators, even if it was innocent. Like, even just as somebody who has facts or knowledge regarding the crimes at issue, or the alleged crimes at issue, you would recuse yourself. So it's just insane. The Senate should be doing more.
yeah.
The House obviously isn't going to right now, but like the Senate should be doing more. They're finally starting to, but I got to be honest, I think they've been unfortunately way too slow. I think they have been way too
Agreed.
hesitant and way too slow, and just they're not acting with the kind of sense of urgency
No.
that I think that they ought to be acting with here, because you've got these people in there that are engaging in brazen corruption that just shouldn't be happening. You should not be able to buy Supreme Court justices.
No.
They shouldn't just be able to take all of these gifts and vacations without it being disclosed. And the reason they didn't disclose them is because they were beyond the pale.
Right.
And the fact that this is just happening over and over again. And by the way, no one has been talking about another way that they've been cozying up to the court kind of indirectly is a lot of these same people like Harlan Crow have been big, big funders of the Supreme Court Historical Society, which is right nearby the court. And it's kind of one of the Supreme Court's like pet charities that they are at the fundraisers for all the time. A lot of big right-wing donors give to that organization so that they then get FaceTime with the justices at in-person events in Washington. And it's basically legalized lobbying to lobby the justices. It's really, really problematic. It shouldn't happen. And it's something that they need to shut that down. But I really, really wish that Dick Durbin, who's the chair of Oversight in the Senate, would really, or Judiciary rather, would really start to take this a little bit more seriously. They've been moving, but they've been moving about 20% as quickly as I'd like to see them move. This should be a national scandal.
Agreed.
That is treated with a sense of urgency, and they're slow walking it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that does speak a little bit to Dick Durbin in general. I think Dick Durbin is one of the more like old school, sort of like old guard. I hesitate to use the
Don't
word
rock the boat.
swampy, but like,
He's a don't rock the boat kind that, and that's really the kicker. It's
yeah,
that's the swampy
yeah,
that's the credo of the swamp
yeah,
is don't rock the boat.
right. That's how you get a
And
Menendez
I
who's
think
still
he's a
there.
not and I think he's a non-boat rocker kind of guy, and I don't
Yeah,
think that that's what we need. He's an institutional kind of guy,
yes,
but I think that the problem that they're mistaking here is that if they truly care about the Senate as an institution and care about Washington as an and DC as an institution, they should be caring about the every day that the Senate doesn't do anything to rein that in. They're basically say it's basically like a big neon sign that says we're weak, we're
yeah.
weak,
They're
we're
castrating
weak.
themselves. Yeah,
Exactly. They're
yeah,
basically saying like, well, they're basically locking in the fact that they can't do anything about it, as opposed to stepping up and saying, no,
yeah.
we're a co-equal branch of
Right,
government.
right, right.
These justices are put in there because of us and the president.
Mm-hmm.
But it can't be that once they're put in, there's nothing there to check them. There has to be a check on them. The obvious place to look for it is Congress. In
Mm-hmm.
my view, what I think they should be doing is saying the Supreme Court does not get a nickel of
That's it.
additional funding.
Yep, yep.
That's what the
That's it. They've
founders
done it
set
before.
up. The founders set up Congress to be the power of the
Yep,
purse. The Senate should be
yep.
stepping in there and saying, "That's it. We're taking like you don't know.
Turn
Oh,
the
you
lights
need to
off.
pay you need to turn your electric bill. You need to
Yep.
pay your clerks, whatever. That's
Yeah.
it. You're done. You need to come in here, and we need to have a binding ethics
Bingo.
set of code. We need to have a code. We're going to have hearings,
Yeah.
and that I actually think they need to take it seriously about whether or not there need to be some potential impeachments.
Agreed.
And I don't think they're
1000%.
going to do it. I
No,
don't think they're going to do
not
it, but
this
that's what they should
Congress.
do.
Yes.
That's
And
not this Congress,
no,
not this leadership. No.
no, no, because they're still old guard. But I think what they need to get the message on, and I had the conversation with Eric Siegel the other day, who said the exact same thing you said. They have the power of the
Yeah.
purse. They've used it in the past. They literally turned like the candles off or something in the past, he said, where they let just the whole place was dark. The lights were off. There was not, they couldn't, they were just shut down.
That's great.
Somebody, I forget who it was that did that. He said they were so mad that they just shut it all down. And I will be tasked to remember, but I cannot remember.
Okay, we're going to figure it out.
They're not meeting the moment. They're not meeting the urgency of the moment. We
No.
are living in extraordinary times. If you have a Supreme Court justice who is just flaunting his corruption, well,
Yeah.
two, and then not recusing himself in cases that are clearly grounds for recusal, you have to take extraordinary measures, because if you don't, then it gets way too far to rein it in. And then they're making decisions on gerrymandered maps. They're making decisions that literally impact our democracy directly. And the Senate is like, well, I don't know. I mean, we had lunch at that one steakhouse. Jerz is a nice guy, And it's like,
yeah,
no more. And if they're not willing to do it, then they need to go, and that goes for both sides of the aisle.
True. It's very much true. Yeah,
Yeah.
they need to come up with a much more robust response to this. It's really appalling.
And they are about to weigh in on issues related to the person who thinks or doesn't think. It's interesting to think, who's claiming that he's immune from prosecution because he wasn't impeached and convicted, which, by the way, fun fact, Mitch McConnell, when he didn't vote to convict, which would, I believe, have swung in our direction
I
had
think
he done
it
it, enough people, 10, at least 15 people would have come along with him,
yes,
the ones that we don't see on TV.
Yes.
He said when he did that, as you probably remember, that this wasn't an issue. This was an issue for the courts to decide.
There's an issue for the courts to decide. There's a civil process. There's criminal prosecution. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what he did, and that's 100% right. And so now he's going to turn around and say, well, that doesn't apply either. And then also he's not going to recuse himself in the 14th Amendment case, which I think is also going to end up getting heard and decided by the court, it looks like.
Yeah.
And where we're going to be determining whether that was an insurrection when arguably Ginny Thomas possibly maybe participated in that insurrection. That is a problem.
Yeah.
That is a big problem. So, and then there's the leaking. We can talk about that's a whole other thing.
Well,
so with Alito, like that's a whole other thing. So,
well,
yeah.
Yeah, I think Alito leaked that because he knew that that was going to destroy, well, it didn't completely yet, the Republican Party. I think that's, I mean, I honestly believe that's why he leaked it. I believe he, because
Really? Yeah.
that's my opinion. I know that they're calculating in a political capacity when it comes to that issue, which is why some people
Yeah.
say they're actually going to vote favorably this summer on the two issues that are coming before them on repro. I don't know if that's true or not, but why do you think he leaked it then? I'm curious.
I think that he leaked it to lock in where the majority was because I
Okay.
think that they had gotten it basically was like they were pulling and pulling and pulling on Kavanaugh to actually
Mm.
sign on to the because the fifth he was the fifth vote for actually overturning Roe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Roberts had the kind of like middle ground position of I think that this Mississippi statute is constitutional, but I'm not going to overturn Roe.
Yep.
That was his middle ground position. Prior to the Trumpization of the court, the Republicans on the Republican appointed justices on SCOTUS would have there would have been kind of a coalescing of like a middle ground on this. That's effectively the kind of like the compromise position was held in a lot of cases back in the 90s by Sandra Day O'Connor. And then
Mm-hmm.
Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which I think was 90 or 91, uh, O'Connor drafted it wasn't really the majority opinion. I think it was technically a concurrence, but it was in the middle. And that was the one. And effectively, she was then like parsing it there to say like Roe lives, even if parts of this restricted Pennsylvania statute are okay and some parts aren't.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the middle ground. That Roberts decision would have carried the day had Kavanaugh signed on to Roberts's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Kavanaugh instead signed on to Alito's opinion.
Mm.
Alito leaked the opinion because then it basically rallied the notion that like, oh look how excited conservatives are about this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it locked in that if Kavanaugh had then left that group of five,
Mm-hmm.
then it would have looked like he had caved to like liberal pressure or establishment pressure. I
Yeah.
think they did it to hold him in their camp. It's like, okay,
Mm.
Brett's with us. He's
Yeah.
in. We're leaking the thing. He can't leave now
That's
because otherwise he'll look like he flipped.
right. That makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense.
That's always been my theory because I think
Yeah.
that there was a tug of war there. Alito and Thomas were pulling one way, and Roberts was pulling the other way. I actually thought, and I was wrong. I thought Kavanaugh would go with Roberts and that Roe would live. I actually
Mm.
did. I was surprised by what happened. I actually did not think they were going to get rid of Roe. But the key was that they got Kavanaugh to go with them.
Yeah. I was naive, completely naive. I used to tell my friends, "Don't worry, it's established law." Like, and then I was like, "Well, they know what they said in their hearings," and I was very naive. But
Yep.
I will say
Yep.
this too, and they had to know. They had to know. Even though conservatives were celebrating and the people were crying in the street, and Marjorie Taylor Greene literally like probably sacrificed a squirrel or something in honor of what happened. I'm just guessing. It has been nothing
Or
but
or or chased it up a tree.
right, exactly to eat it for dinner. But it has been nothing but a weight on the entire party since. I mean, it has backfired magnificently for them electorally, and it will only continue to
Yeah.
do that. They have, I mean, they had to know. They had to know that being able to fundraise off of the prospect of able to do that,
Yes.
right, was going to.
100%.
But then when they finally did it, that would flip.
The dog caught the car.
Right, right.
What are
And
you
now
going to
what?
do now?
Right.
Well, no, here's the problem. Problem. Yes, but what are they doing now? Now they're saying, "Oh yeah, that's right. It isn't a states' rights issue. It's a federal issue, and we're going to." So they're working for a national ban now. So the whole thing, this whole time, from 73 to 2023 was oh, it's a states' rights issue, or I guess 22. I guess it was
Mm.
73 to 22. Oh, it's a states' rights issue. Oh, it's a states' rights issue. They finally get Roe to go away. And now it's like, it's a federal issue.
Yeah.
We're going to
Well,
ban it everywhere. And
yeah.
I still actually think that there's a lot of folks that are in the center and the left
Yeah.
that still don't actually understand what this means. And I think they're about to figure it out within the next like 9 months
Agreed.
is, hi, hello, I'll talk to them. I'll talk to the. It's like, hi, you live in California.
Yeah,
You
right.
live you live in New York City. You live
Hmm.
in like Boston or like
Hmm.
Vermont. You know, you live in Seattle. You think it's all nice and warm and cozy, and you're
Hmm.
in your super duper blue enclave. Like your
Hmm.
house district is like 80%, 90% blue. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to be illegal there too.
Yeah, yeah.
They're going to pass it. If
Mm.
we lose this year, it's over. No,
Hmm.
you're going to like then it's not like, oh, you live in Texas, you've got to go to, by the way, it's a like long way. It's like you got to go to New Mexico
Yeah,
or whatever, which is like a long way. Texas is big.
yeah.
Like for big chunks of the South, it's like a very, 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 very long trip to
You
get
have
to
to go to
someplace
Virginia,
where there's the
basically. Yeah,
clinic or to Colorado. They've got to
yeah,
fly. Like you
yeah.
can't just drive.
Nope.
Like no, 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 no. You live in New York, you're going to Canada.
Yeah,
You live in California, you're going to Mexico. Like this is like it's going to be all 50 states.
yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. And then guess what? They're not going to be. Here's the problem. You know what? The thing is, like, if you keep giving into crazy, crazy just wants more.
Mm-hmm.
And so the crazies are going to come for, you know what they're going to come for? They get that. They're going to get that. You know what they're going to come for next?
Contraception.
Contraception.
Yeah,
No more pill.
yeah.
No more
No more
condoms.
condoms.
Hello. I've got another one. Hello, men. Hi.
You can
Hi,
still have
I'm
Viagra.
Tristan. Yeah, it's like, no, well, maybe they will be, but it's like, oh, condoms? No, 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 no. That's
No.
not happening anymore.
Mm-mm.
Like, let's
But
fast forward to what this looks like in 2026,
I
2027.
can't.
Like,
Yeah. But don't but
it's
don't
going to be
worry.
over.
But don't worry too much, men, because you're not really on the hook until that baby is born, because there are no laws regarding, the 6 week, 5 week fetus, not yet, where the man who put the fetus in the woman is responsible for the life that the state is saying trumps the life of the woman who's, or the birthing person who is
Correct.
carrying that fetus. So men are
Right.
you're good, but also
You're
don't worry, because if you abused your girlfriends or wives in the past and you had a gun, and you couldn't have the gun anymore, the Supreme Court is probably going to decide that that's not fair to you, and so they're going to let you
right.
have that gun back.
They're
So
going to
if
let you
she
have it.
does get knocked up and she won't, like, you can't afford it or whatever, yeah, just use that gun and just get rid of the problem. And then run for president so that you can get absolute
Yeah.
total complete immunity from everything all the time. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
scary. Oh my God, it's scary. And the fact is, again, the end of this tangent, but right now, even though we don't have a federal ban in this country, because it is banned in so many states, if you live in Michigan, let's just say right now, to get an abortion for whatever reason, medically necessary, it doesn't matter, whatever reason,
Hmm.
you have to basically get on a month long. That's if you're miscarrying. I know someone whose cousin was miscarrying. She called to
Yep.
try and get a DNC, not DNC, DNC. They gave
Yep.
her a month. She had a month. They said, well, you're going to have to try and miscarry at home. And if you have any complications, you have to go to the ER. Well, we don't have any appointments for you, because everybody
Right.
from every other state surrounding is going to
Are
Michigan
piling in.
because they have
And
nowhere in their place.
there already was a crisis in this area medically
Yeah,
because of all of the death threats and
right.
attacks and assaults and everything else. Like it's long been a very fraught area to go into. So for a lot of doctors, especially if they're not in a big urban center, the idea that you're going to see a lot of folks offering that procedure, it
Right.
already was a problem,
Oh, and there are
and now
red
it's even
states,
worse.
right? There are red states with medical schools that don't even teach that
Right.
you can't where what do they call that? The residencies, the residents can't learn how to do these surgeries because they're not being performed because they're banned, and so then you're going to have even fewer people who can. It's
Right.
terrible. It's terrible. It is the reason it is one of the top three, I believe, motivating issues for voters, along with protecting our
I think so.
democracy. Yeah. And it
I
turns out,
think
as you
so.
said, there's a lot more Americans, I think, through as we saw in Ohio on issue one, who are actually, pro choice in the meaning I can choose, and also I want my right to choose. Like what
Right.
issue one in Ohio is going to do is take the right to just make your own choices away from you.
Even if the choice is never, ever,
Right.
ever to have an abortion,
Correct.
ever,
Yeah.
and the choice is to carry always and to put up for adoption, even if that's the choice, they want to have the freedom to do so. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah. I feel like that's a promising sign for democracy
I think it's
overall.
a very promising sign.
Yeah.
I think the kicker is that you just have to actually get to a point where it's not a poll and it's not the off season of politics or whatever. And, you know, everybody listening to this and watching this, of course, is, you know, we're the folks that are dialed in all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're on this all the time, and we're
Yeah.
thinking about these things and fighting about these things all the
Mm-hmm.
time. But for folks who are not total political junkies, you know, it's, you know, we'll be able to get everybody's attention starting in September, October. And I think when it's really put to people, when the rubber hits the road and it's time to go to the vote and it's time to go to the voting booth, like, we see the results,
Yeah.
not polls,
Nope.
which are whatever they are and
Right.
are often kind of skewed purposely in a certain direction.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this is that the right wingers have figured out that if they can put out a skewed poll,
Mm-hmm.
publicize the bejesus out of it in the media,
Mm-hmm.
it actually helps them do fundraising.
Yeah.
And the media is a pawn in this, and
Oh,
they're not realizing it.
completely.
Actually, the media likes it too sometimes because they want to show it to be more of a horse race. I think they want to see that, like, oh, there's some polls that are red and some polls that are blue. You should
Yeah.
tune in to find out who's winning. Like, that's what they want.
Right. Of
And
course.
then, yeah, but also the Republicans that are able to raise more money off of these things. But if you actually look at how voters have done
Mm-hmm.
when they've decided things in the past couple of years, it's
Yeah.
like a little bit tough to find too many causes for optimism on the Republican side. So
especially on that issue, but in general, I mean, it's one thing what they do is
it helps me go to sleep at night.
yeah,
So,
right,
you know,
because they box themselves into these extremely insane positions that are required to just win a primary. You have to
right.
be so
That's
freaking
right.
ultra MAGA. You have to be like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You have to be like that. Granted, she's in an incredibly safe district, which she doesn't have to worry, but whatever.
Yeah,
But you have to be
worry.
like rabidly MAGA for the primary, and then that
Yes.
rabidly MAGA doesn't translate beyond there. Like, it doesn't translate on a national scale because Americans, like, ultimately, we don't really want the fucking crazy. Like, we just want somebody who's like, oh, I want to talk to you about things that actually matter to you. Like, I want to talk to you about democracy. I want to talk to you about, like, making sure you can vote. I don't want to talk to you
How
about
about
fucking
jobs and healthcare?
right,
Like,
right,
you know,
right.
like
Yeah, I'm not
simple
coming for your
things,
friggin' Social Security. Like, this,
Yeah.
these are kitchen table issues. We say this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, kitchen table issues.
Right.
And repro is not necessarily kitchen table. It is, though, because it's like deciding when someone
It's a
forcing them to
huge
have a
economic
family.
issue for people, though. It really is,
Right.
because that's exactly right. It
Right.
is a huge economic issue. But
It's the biggest
anybody who
economic
doesn't
decision of your
think
life.
that's right, anybody who doesn't think that having a kid or not having a kid is an economic issue doesn't have kids.
Right.
Or is a man who doesn't think about these things. Like,
Yeah, well,
it's very, very much an economic issue.
100%.
So,
and the
yeah.
fact that people, again, it's a universally held, I believe, truth that no one else should get to make that decision for you, no matter what you vote. Because in Ohio, I think 17 different districts that went Trump. Maybe that's wrong. It's somewhere in that number. Voted
That
for
map
issue
was
1.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Because if you did it out by color coding, and it was like there were a lot of counties that voted that voted to protect reproductive rights that were away from, if you know the map of Ohio, and you know that, like, most of the population is in about 4 big urban centers.
Yeah.
And a bunch of the rest of the state is very rural.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of counties in some of these very rural places that were Trump.
Yep.
that went the other way on that issue. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think that the alarm bells are sounding off loudly enough on the GOP side on this, but they should be, because it's
They
like,
don't know how to, they don't know how, they don't, I don't even think the reason they don't know how to message it is because there's no winning message when you're putting any restrictions, really. Youngkin thought he had the magic bullet with whatever his was 15, I think, and that lost in November. There's no messaging. You can't, Nikki Haley can't message it. No one can message this issue, because at the end of the day, when you're talking about making these decisions for families, making these decisions for human beings, they don't want you to. 7 out of 7 times this has appeared on a ballot measure. It's passed. They've been able to, right, because this is the will. This is actually the will of the people, and people can say whatever they want about this being a democratic, being democracy, or whatever the republic, or whatever they say. It's stupid, but I get it. Whatever, but it's still a dumb talking point. But at the end of the day, we the people still do have the power to make our voices heard, as we've seen in these states, state after state after state. And Republicans are handcuffed to this. They don't know how to message it. Trump doesn't know how to message it. He's all over the map with, I'm responsible for Roe. I'm not actually that extreme on Roe. Like, he's all over the map.
He's all over the place. Yeah.
Because he doesn't know how to message it either. And there's like no truth to that person.
But when the chips are down, he put the people on the court that he put in there.
Right. Right.
So, that's the thing. You gotta actually see how they acted, not how they're talking. And
Right.
and very much the proof is there by the Supreme
Their
Court
actions.
majority that we currently have.
Yeah, and he does own that for forever.
Yeah,
And
forever.
again, it works for his base. It works for the
It works for them.
evangelicals, but does not work on a national scale. I mean, he's already lost
Right.
once. But
Yeah.
real fast back to Trump because I know we're way over. I always go way over. Real fast. So let's just talk about one thing that was really important to me because there's this idea that's being pushed out there all the time. He does it all the
Hmm.
time. He even did it in his business fraud case yesterday, where that's a whole
Yep.
nother conversation, where he says that all of these, every single one, every trial is politically motivated and election interference. And I just right, all you have to do is look at the facts of when these investigations were launched and when he announced his candidacy to just dispel that. But there's still this
Yes.
prevailing narrative that these are all
Yes.
Democrat initiated indictments and charges and cases because they don't want to be president. Like, just let's just can you just dispel that for me, like, just as concisely as possible?
So yes, I think I can. I actually talk about this in the epilogue of my book,
Mm.
and because it as it's it was the part that I wrote last. I tried to put off writing it for as long as I could until right up to the point that they're like, the book's got to go to the printers. You got to finish writing this. I'm like, okay, okay, okay.
Hmm.
So early November, I wrote the epilogue to the book, and at that point, a lot we were hearing in the fall was Trump whining and moaning and complaining about how all these things were politically motivated and it was all timed for the fact that he was running for president and so forth and so on. Here's the thing. A big case like this, by and large, usually takes around 2.5 years to actually bring from beginning to actually seeing either a civil prosecution get filed or a criminal prosecution result in an indictment. Uh, and you can map that out based on a number of these matters. If you work backwards and you see, okay, all of these indictments hit like last summer, okay, if you rewind 2.5 years, like what was going on, like what was happening there? It's like, oh look, he committed all of these crimes allegedly, in late 2020, early 2021. What's 2.5 years after that? Summer of 2023.
Mhm.
So, as I wrote in the book, if Trump didn't want to get, if he didn't want to get investigated in 2022 or indicted in 2023 or tried in 2024, he shouldn't have committed a crime spree in 2020 and 2021.
Right.
That's why the chickens are coming home to roost,
Right. Right.
because those chickens, the eggs were laid or whatever the heck. I'm gonna lose the metaphor here, but like those eggs were coming out back in the January 6th timeframe. And remember, that also was what happened right after J6. He left office. What was
Mhm.
he doing as he left office? He took the flipping documents with him. That's what he did. So he went. He was nothing but criming all
Yeah.
November, December, January. Crime, 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 crime. Like all of those crimes were getting committed,
He was
and
immune.
allegedly, oh,
Yeah.
he was immune.
Yeah.
Allegedly, but the thing is, like, that's why. It's not because he's running for president again. It's because he went on a flipping crime spree back now 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That's why he's getting tried this year. So, think about it the next time you go on a crime spree, criminals.
Yeah.
Think about the timetable of when that's going to mean you're actually going to act, when you're going to get caught and when you're going to get tried.
Hmm.
You got to think these things through.
I'm just
Pull out
picturing
your
Trump.
calendar.
Yeah,
Pull out your calendar
we had
before you
Google
start
calendars for a
criming.
reason. I'm picturing
Yeah,
Trump like
exactly.
shitting
It
out
goes
eggs.
ahead multiple years.
Yeah, it's
But
funny.
he should. It's like, well, I'm going to commit a bunch of crimes. It's like, let me look forward at what I'm going
Yeah.
to be doing 2.5 to 3 years from now.
Amazingly, though, because he
Think it
contends,
through.
right. But they won't have total immunity like he does because
Yeah.
they're half the J6ers that are totally hostages. They're in jail and he's not. Okay, so we have to wrap, but I do have the three
Yes.
random questions. But before that, because you mentioned the book is coming out very soon. It's taking down Trump, 12 rules for prosecuting Donald Trump and I missed the last part, because you've done it successfully, right? That's the end of the
Yes.
title. Tell
Yes.
me about the book.
Yes. So Yeah, so the book comes out January 30th.
That's so soon.
It is I know, ugh, it's already available on pre-order.
Oh, nice.
And what I'm hearing is that apparently demand is already very good. So, we probably will be doing a second printing. So anybody
Nice.
who definitely wants to get their copy right as it's being released, probably a good idea to get it just in case we actually do run out. I don't know that we will, but you never know.
Yeah.
Uh, it
Awesome.
won't run
Exciting.
out for good, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
Hmm.
Good problems to have.
Right.
It's a playbook with 12 rules for how to beat Trump in court in prosecution or litigation. It's drawn in part from my experience leading the Trump University prosecution at the New York AG's office, but also then my analysis as a legal commentator the last couple of years and a lot of research that I did into the last 50 years of Trump trying to be above the law and evading justice and accountability. And all of the prosecutors who didn't even bother trying to prosecute him, let alone the ones who, might have not succeeded. Uh,
Hmm.
we, so I go through a lot of that, and I go through what does it take, what does it look like he stonewalls you. So how do you actually get documents?
Hmm.
He's going to counterattack you. How do you respond?
Hmm.
Uh, you know, what can you do to actually use like his former vendors? He often doesn't pay them, so those people
Hmm.
can be used as allies, and they can help you break open the case. And then
Hmm.
what do you do when you're ready to take the case public, and what do you have to do then? So I walk through the whole life cycle of a case, and what I really set out to do here is to say, look, I know a lot of people out there, uh, our audience, this audience, this wonderful pro democracy audience, I know we're divided into two camps. There's team optimism and there's team
Hmm.
pessimism.
Hmm.
And we're all on the same page about what we want. We want justice.
Yeah.
And we want the rule of law, we want democracy.
Yeah.
But I also know that there's the team that thinks that this is actually going to happen and that Donald Trump's going to be taken down. And then there's
Hmm.
definitely a group that's like, nothing's happening fast enough. It's never going to happen. He's going to get
Yeah.
away with everything. And why can't
Mm.
everybody see that? And Merrick Garland should resign.
Yeah.
And there's two camps there. I meant this to be for everybody. I
Mm.
think that the optimists will be able to take the optimism out of this, but I also wrote this for all of you, and I'm sometimes one of them that can get very pessimistic about this. To
Mm.
say like, look, it can be done because I did it.
Yeah.
I can, and it's not easy, and it's not sexy, and it's not quick, but you basically, it's a slog, and you're just pushing this boulder the whole
Mm.
time. But if you keep pushing it, it will start to build a momentum of its own, and it will, if you do it right, crush everything in its path.
Let's
And
go.
that's the way that you need to bring one of these cases. And it's a lot of work, and and sometimes it looks like it's going too slowly. But I wanted to give people some cause for optimism, but grounded in reality,
Mm, that's
not just
important.
like, oh, it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah,
Like, no,
no.
no, no. It sucks, and it's a lot of work, and it's painful to watch from the outside.
Hmm.
But like, I do believe that a lot of these cases are proceeding in the right way. And
Mm.
I think that the playbook that we developed at the AG's office with the Trump University case, the Trump Foundation case, now we see it with the New York AG bringing this civil
Hmm.
fraud case. They're
Hmm.
running the same playbook. I can
Mm.
see it, and I think Jack Smith got the playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm definitely sending him a copy of my book. I don't know if he'll actually get it, but I'm
Yeah.
going to send him one. But
That's
like, I don't
awesome.
think, and I don't think he needs it. I don't think
Yeah.
Fonnie Willis needs it. I know Tish James doesn't need it, but I'm
Right.
going to give her one anyway. But
Right.
like, we're going to make sure that this playbook carries the day because we need America to survive.
Yeah. Well, do we ever? It's interesting because the slog you just referenced, it just reminds me of this the Bannon idea of flooding the zone with shit. I think that the idea, the expectation, the calculation is that people won't want to make the slog. So they're gonna abandon these cases, give up. The population won't be there, and that people will get too tired, and so they won't keep going. And you did keep going, and
Right.
you have 12 steps for keeping going because that's what we have to do because justice requires it, and this country requires it, and our kids fucking require it.
Yes.
Yeah. You got 1 minute. All right, I'm going to ask you one of my random questions because I have three. Okay. Okay. We talked about food, I think, the last time we talked. What is your guilty pleasure? What is a guilty pleasure of yours? Something that you're ashamed to admit that you enjoy. It could be a food or a
I
show.
am I am actually I got a good one.
Okay.
I'm actually a Bravo super fan.
Ooh, Ooh, bravo out there. Are you listening? Get Tristan on.
I started watching because of it wasn't really losing a bet, but it was kind of losing a bet. I basically made a deal with my wife.
Uh-huh.
This was 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
I actually some of the shows I'm not as fond of, but like a lot of them I actually really do truly do like.
Like Real
So yes, that
Housewives.
is probably some of the Housewives ones. I'm actually probably most fond of like Vanderpump
Oh.
and Southern Charm
Oh, I've never
and
seen that.
Summer House. So the shows with the sort of younger generation.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Less
actually really
bitchy New York City moms or wives or whatever. Yeah.
instead it's sort of like it's a lot of folks getting hammered at various like like summery looking locales
Hooking up.
um and hooking up with each other.
Yeah.
It's high entertainment and I enjoy it immensely.
Well, there you go. I mean, I look,
So
there's a Squid Game reality show that I'm obsessed with, and it's pure like entertainment TV, and I'm not at all, and I don't feel guilty about it. But that's a good
yeah,
one. It's like
yeah,
the real world, but for grown-ups in 2024, which I
maybe
watched.
grown-ups. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the book, which will be available. It's available for pre-order now. It'll be available for sale
Yes.
January 30th.
It's already available. You can pre-order it now. It'll deliver to you at that point, or it'll hit your Kindle on Jan 30. You can go to takingdowntrump.com to go pick which bookstore you want to buy it from.
Yay. And that is awesome. And I'll put like links to, your socials and stuff in the podcast notes or whatever you call those, because I still don't know what these all things are called, because I'm still a 49-year-old lady living in the Jersey suburbs that doesn't have a technological bone in her body. But with that, I suppose we conclude this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. Thank you again to my guest, Tristan Snell. A wealth of knowledge. It went to directions I wasn't expecting, because that's just where the conversation went, but also incredibly, incredibly important conversation. And so grateful for you. So excited for your book. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thanks, JoJo. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. And we're going to have a lot of work to do this year.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be busy.
Very
Yep.
busy.